afternoon. Welcome back to the Edge of Light. My name is Michael Hemmett, and I have a couple new topics to cover today, but I thought that it would be really helpful before I get too far into talking about, my ideas and perspectives on various spiritual things, to kind of review just some of the more common words that are used in this spiritual conversations. Because if you have a different understanding of a word, different definition, and I'm using it, then it can be confusing. So I wanted to just go through a little bit of what certain words mean to me, and you can skip over some misunderstanding with that. So the first thing is, pain versus suffering. So when I say pain and suffering, and typically I won't really ever talk about pain, because I consider pain is a sensation of the body, suffering is an experience of the mind. So now, what makes it a little bit tricky is that more often than not, the two occur at the same time, and so it might seem that they are the same. Both pain and suffering are the same experience, but they're not, of course. So, for example, if I get punched or something, like somebody attacks me, that will be pain. It's a sensation of the body, but the suffering is completely dependent on the context. So let's say somebody out of their own rage has nothing to do with me, and they hit me, and I'm just like become a victim immediately. Okay, that's suffering. But let's say it's a different scenario where I'm falling asleep driving, and somebody hits me to wake me up because they're trying to help. And then I'm like, I might feel that hit, and I'll have that sensation, that physical sensation of pain, but there's no mental suffering from that, because I'm not mad at that person. I haven't created a story of why, woe is me, I'm a victim. So in both scenarios, I might be struck by somebody, but depending on the story that I create about why that happened is determining whether or not there's mental suffering. So that's the thing. Even to say mental suffering is a redundancy in this definition. So if I say suffering, I'm talking about suffering that we create for ourselves. It's something that is generated of the mind, that disrupts us. The reason why it's so important to distinguish between pain and suffering is because pain is part of the natural world. There's no escaping that. We need pain to survive. It's our way of interacting with the physical world. If you didn't have pain, that's like leprosy. It's a very bad thing. So the pain is a very important and critical part of existing as a living organism. The suffering, on the other hand, is not. It can give you information about your life and how you and your actions and how you feel about people, but it's not as necessary or critical as people make it seem, because it gets conflated with pain, and that's the problem. So if you stub your toe, which I actually did recently, I kicked the bottom of this chair and then it took some skin off, and it hurt a little bit, but that was it, and then you don't think about it anymore. You just try not to get blood on the furniture, on the rug, and then you move on. But in another example, like let's say I have a conflict with someone, and they say something to me that I don't like, and as a result of that, then even though nothing physical happened, for the next hour, couple hours, maybe the whole evening, I just run in my mind over and over again, oh, that person, such and such, and what are they, and who are they to say this to me, and blah, 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 blah. All these things. And so if you really look at that, there's no pain occurring, just an enormous amount of suffering that I'm creating for myself. And really, that's what suffering is. It's just a way that we psychologically injure ourselves. And again, it's so important to realize that pain and suffering are two completely separate things that often happen at the same time, because you cannot control pain that occurs, but you can control the suffering. And that's so important. It's so important because when you realize that you are actually creating all of your own suffering, then it gives you authority. Now you can say, do I want to continue hurting myself? You know? I mean, if you're, again, if you're being attacked by a bear and it hurts, you don't have a lot of choice in that situation. If you are fighting with your boss, your brother, your spouse, your children in your mind, and it hurts you and it makes you angry, depressed, despondent, distant, all these things, these are mental injuries that you are creating and that you are completely 100% in control of. So anyway, that's why it's important to separate pain from suffering. One you can control, one you cannot. And so in the spiritual context, I think you will really only hear me talking about suffering, and that's what I mean, is suffering of the mind that we inflict on ourselves. Okay, so next thing is karma. Just to be clear, I'm not a student of Hinduism or Eastern philosophy any more than a lot of people in this field. I don't have special knowledge. But when I use the word karma, and I'm sure this isn't accurate in a lot of ways, but when I use it, it's coming from a very, I'd say, scientific kind of almost Newtonian push reflex. So when I'm talking about karma, which I don't really do often, but I just thought I'd cover this word anyway, is it's when you push out on people or the environment or energy, you're going to get that in equal dose in return. And people will talk about like Akashic records as and like various situations where there's like a catalog or like a ledger of your good and bad deeds and all that. And I don't believe that. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't have any evidence of that. I've never seen it. It could be true. I don't know. But what I do see is that when something happens and you have a positive or negative feeling about it, you immediately re-radiate whatever that is. And it's so easy to see that, like, if someone's having a bad experience and you bring them positivity, then you can immediately shift them because you're just emanating into the environment. It's that immediate. That's the critical thing, I think, that about karma, that it's not like something happens now and then in some future event or whatever, then you get like payback. Like, a lot of people think of karma as a payback kind of thing, as a retribution or punishment, and I just don't see it that way. I think, one, that karma is neutral. It doesn't depend on positive or negative, but that if you are out there looking for beautiful things, you will find beautiful things. If you're out there looking for anything else, you're going to find what you're looking for, and that is the karma. That it will be reflected back. So that's karma. That's my dog. Rex, come here. Next is deja vu. So, I'm not sure exactly what the textbook definition of deja vu is, but it comes up a lot in spiritual circles because, and this is where my interpretation for my experiences is that when you are in a certain alignment, it's almost like you're crossing or you're touching an orientation, and when it touches, it comes to you as a sense of recognition. So that sense of I've been here before, this is familiar, is that kind of feedback of being on track. Now, I'm using my hands because I just use my hands a lot, but that doesn't mean that that moment was special, but that whatever in the general field is in alignment. And so there's a couple things that I want to clarify on that is I'm highly confident in this phenomenon because this is what I notice in my life. You know, I'm speaking from my personal experience. Yes, it's anecdotal. No, I didn't record a lot of it. But as I get more and more and more aligned, these kinds of synchronistic events and memories and visions, they all start to come together, and I start seeing things it's not repetitive, but in this greater and greater sense of familiarity. And every time it happens, it feels good in a weird way. You know, it's not that the feeling is weird, but it's that, like, for example, the other day, I had a deja vu experience. This was yesterday or the day before. It's hard to tell. But it was weird because in my vision, I saw all blue up here and like this. It was all blue. And then over here, I saw some red dots or something. And you know, when I had that vision, I thought, and the vision occurred, I don't know, a couple months ago. It's meaningless because a lot of times, I have to be honest, like, I have visions fairly often, but they almost never mean anything to me. But I'll just, like, normally I'll have a vision and then just, okay, you know, that was interesting. But then it clicked when I was playing with my daughter, and I was laying on the bed that had a blue comforter, blanket, but my head was on the bed, and she had like a toy over here that I saw, and it just, like, you know, it was that scene that made no sense at the time that then in that moment just clicked. And I was like, oh, okay, I see what these parts that made no sense, now they make sense. And it just, you know, having these moments of recognition, I think it does give us feedback of our alignment, and it feels good. So when I talk about deja vu, it's that's what I mean. Is it's a feedback about a sense of alignment, like as an orientation. Now, there could be I wouldn't say if you've never had deja vu, then that means you're in absolute chaos. I would say it just means that it would be recommended that you pay more attention to things that you may not be paying attention to. So, for example, only because I gave enough attention to the initial vision did it become so apparent as a checkpoint later on. Whereas a lot of times I'll have dreams or visions that I wake up, I'm busy, gotta go do something, and it just kind of gets washed. If you find that you're not having these deja vu moments, the first thing I would do, besides anything else, is just try to slow down a little bit. When you have an experience, you see something that you don't understand, don't dismiss it. Sit with it for a minute. You don't have to understand it, but just try to look at it a little bit more, you know? And then, it'll just get filed away until it gets provoked. And you'll never know which of these things, how that will happen. You just have to really just, be mindful, pay attention. Yeah, so the next thing I want to talk about is vision, which is really related. So the way people have visions, I don't know exactly what people mean when they say they're having a vision. I don't know if it's a feeling or a sense in some way. When I say a vision, I mean an actual vision with my, I'm having an experience of vision, and it's not with my physical eyes. So think of it more like, how clear you're seeing something in a dream, but you're not dreaming. So, sometimes my physical eyes are open when I'm having a vision, and sometimes they're not. More often they're not, because when the eyes are open, it takes an enormous amount of energy away from other types of awareness. But either way, when I say vision, I mean I'm actually seeing it, and that's why in Carlos Castaneda, he talked about when he was talking to Don Juan, they would talk about how the visions can't be wrong, and the reason why they can't be wrong is because they don't interpret. So it's like you see what you see, and then if you try to interpret it, yeah, that can be wrong for sure. People make mistakes in interpretation all the time. But you see what you see, and then you can report that or note it or whatever. So that's what I mean by a vision. You see what you see. Okay, so I'll just go to this one really quick, and then I want to end with warrior. Truth. It's a very common thing nowadays for people to talk about truth as if it's like this malleable, personal thing. And I guess kind of in a way it is, and I can see, everyone's got their own perspective. But the word itself loses meaning when you add that extra asterisks of this is my truth. Because from my perspective, and ironically I'll say for my truth, there is only one truth, because it has to be true for everybody. If it's not true for everybody, it's not really true. It's like a law of physics. If gravity only works in Detroit but not in Chicago, then it's not a law. Something else is going on. So only if it's true all the time, everywhere, is it the truth, capital T. So then the question would be well, what is that truth? And there's only one truth, and it is itself truth, which would be awareness or consciousness or God or any of the other millions of words that are used to describe love, being, presence. All these are synonyms of truth. So, man, it's hot in here. I closed everything up because keep noise out, but it's toasty. So, the truth, when I use the word, is to mean the infinite, the void, the center of everything, but in dimensionless space, blah, 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 all that. Truth, in my context, is not my opinion. If I'm going to share an opinion, I'll just say it's an opinion. Okay. So I want to end on the word warrior, because this just means a lot to me. to be a warrior has really nothing to do with being combative. You know, obviously that's a very limited way of looking at it, because like my wife right now is an absolute warrior, taking care of our daughter. I mean, our daughter is 1 year old, hardly sleeping, troubles with her tummy. Uh, there's not a fight, you know, in that sense, but there's definitely a fight in a different sense. You know, it's an absolute warrior mentality to stay with that, stay present with her, and to just keep loving her and nurturing her. That's a certain sense of strength, um, and so that would be a big part of what I consider. You know, if you call someone a warrior, you call yourself a warrior, it's having that grit to stick with something, regardless. And it doesn't matter how hard it gets, because there is not an option to quit. So, and a more visceral example that I can think of is like, um, one time I went hiking up in the mountains, way, 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 like, it's like me and this guy, and we were up. It's in California, in Mount Whitney. It's in the winters, like almost nobody up there. We got lost. It's a huge mess. Several miles from the road, and it was getting dark, and and it was a situation where it was like, I can either hike myself out because no one's coming to get me, or I'm gonna die. And then it just like something clicked. It's just like that warrior mentality. Just, you know, no one's gonna save me. I have to figure this out. And obviously I did. I'm here, but it was really, really tough. It was very, you know, I wasn't sure that I was going to get out for many hours of hiking, like waist deep in snow in the dark. It was not clear to me that I was going to live through that ordeal. But what's the option? An unacceptable scenario. So keep pushing on, you know, cannot quit. Um, Now, that's pretty dramatic, but in the lighter, more common sense of the word, when I use it, it's a lot about having integrity with people and yourself. You know, it's about having a very high quality relationship with yourself and everyone else. So, you know, having the strength to be honest with people, and again, you know, with yourself. I mean, always it's the relationships that we have is with everybody, and we are part of everybody, so there's always that. But but it does take a lot of strength, you know, to give somebody bad news. It takes a lot of strength um, to say something where you really need to be clear with somebody, and you don't know how it's going to turn out. It might make the situation worse. You don't know. So um, so there's a certain warrior attitude that I think is really important for doing spiritual work, because you can't be you can't be distracted by other people's opinions in this kind of work, because if you let um, that influence you, it's going to degrade your ability to work with people. So, um, so that's it for the definitions. We are running a little bit low on time. I want to talk about sleep real quick, just because this is fun for me. So, when I was talking about how pain and suffering are interrelated, but not the same, and they can be separated, um, sleep and rest are the same way. Uh, Most people that I know, almost everybody, assumes that sleep is necessary. And I know this sounds odd, and I'll just tell you, sleep is not necessary. I'm not saying this again, as I made a promise in the previous video that I don't talk about things from a theoretical, speculative point of view. I went through a period of not sleeping for about 5 days, and not on purpose. Oh, and the baby's awake. All right, we'll come back to this. All right, let's try to get this last bit. So, sleep. I didn't sleep for about 5 days, and it wasn't on purpose. Here's the thing. I was in Vipassana, and in Vipassana, if you haven't done it, and I do recommend that you do it, it's an amazing experience, and I don't want to just say that they try to be really clear not to come in with an expectation of experience. This is my experience. I'm just relating it in the context of sleep, but people have visions and all these various things, but don't get attached to that thing. In my experience there, they prepare your food, they tell you what to do based on a bell to let you know. They take you surrender like your stuff so you're not distracted. So basically, you show up to your meditations, you watch the lectures, you're fed, and you rest. And as long, and this is my experience, as long as you're doing everything as it's prescribed, and a lot of people kind of screw off, or don't do it quite the way, or they resist it, or whatever, as long as you really commit to the process, you're meditating like hours, I don't know, like maybe 6 hours a day. You're meditating so much that your mind is so rested that it doesn't need to shut off anymore. It doesn't need to go into that unconscious phase where it shuts down to force you to rest. Now they are very clear, and I talked to the guys there, the body still needs rest. So even though the mind is not asleep in that unconscious way, it's still very, very important for the body to lie down for periods to rest. So that is still occurring, but you never actually go unconscious. Now, this is absolutely fascinating to me, because as far as I knew, and as far as everybody that's ever talked to me about this, sleep is a requirement of life. And they'll say if you don't sleep for 3 days, then you go insane. Eckhart Tolle talks about that. But it's not true. What is true, and this goes back to when I was talking about coupling pain and suffering, or decoupling them, we couple rest and sleep. And I'm saying they're not the same. If you rest, you don't need the sleep. And now the practicality of that is, and I'll just be honest with the practicality of it is that I was only able to go into that kind of space because I was in a very controlled environment, that I was being so supported that I could get by being so rested all the time. Now, I have a child, I have a wife, we've got work and all these things. I don't have the luxury of being so rested all the time such that I can forego sleep on an ongoing basis. Now, having said that, I do think that it's possible for someone to engage in a normal life in such a relaxed state that they need very, very little, if any, rest. I think that is possible. I'm not there yet, but I do see that as a very feasible possibility if you can get to a place of engaging the world very relaxed. But I just think that that's fascinating. We take certain things for granted, that one requires the other, and then as time goes on, we find out that that's not true. Like pain and suffering and sleep and rest. So that's it for today. Take care.